It's your fault that they're calling me stinky at school. Why are you even a janitor? You stink! Stay away from me! My son started verbally abusing me around the time he was about to enter middle school next year. I guess he was probably being teased at school because I worked as a janitor. My name is Kathy Anderson. I was 34 at the time, and my son was 12. My husband passed away due to an illness shortly after our son started elementary school. To raise my son, I started working at a cleaning company. My son was a kind kid who often helped me. But in elementary school, he started to change gradually as he was ridiculed for my job. When he entered middle school, he started hanging out with kids who were not well liked, even getting caught playing outside at night. I was frequently called to the school due to his misconduct. Raising a child as a single mother was tougher than I had thought, but by his third year in middle school, his bad behavior stopped abruptly and he began to focus on studying. It seemed he was scared straight after witnessing his friends get caught by the police for shoplifting. I don't want to live a bottom-of-the-barrel life like you. I'm going to study, graduate from a good university, and lead an elite life by getting a job at a reputable company, he began to say. While I had mixed feelings about his words, I was relieved that he had finally started to show some motivation. I thought the priority was to let him focus on his studies. It was indeed joyous to see him entering a good high school and studying hard. And so, my son was admitted to the high school he had hoped for. I was truly delighted. The high school my son attended was private, and both the admission fee and tuition were far from cheap, but I managed to cover them by increasing my shifts and tightening my budget. Hey, what's with this pathetic meal? I need to eat more nutritious things, you know. Give me better meat. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best, but paying the tuition is all I can manage. Then work harder. You're just feeding me this cheap food. Are you even my parent? It's a parent's duty to support their child. His verbal abuse got worse after he entered high school. Perhaps because many of his classmates came from wealthy families, he might have felt miserable about his own circumstances. To spare my son any embarrassment, I cut back on my own spending, buying nothing for myself and using everything I had for him. Although he's abusive now, I believe he will understand when he grows up. Remembering how kind he was in elementary school, I spurred myself on. I'm going to study abroad when I go to college. Huh? I want to go for about a year, so I'll need around $30,000 to $40,000. That much? You're not going to say you can't afford it, right? It's a parent's duty to fulfill their child's wishes. Don't use poverty as an excuse. I understand. However, if he goes to university, there will be more tuition fees. How could I possibly come up with the money for studying abroad? Even now, my life is already on a tightrope. So, I asked the cleaning company to switch me to an early morning shift, and then started working at a 24-hour supermarket late at night. I worked at the cleaning company from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., went home to prepare dinner for my son and do household chores, and then worked at the supermarket from 5 p.m. to midnight. On the days when the cleaning company was closed, I filled in part-time at the supermarket, working without a day off. In doing so, my son was able to enroll in a well-known private university he had wished for. Since I only graduated high school, I was happy that my son could go to university. In his second year, he went abroad to study. The university fees were substantial, so I could not cover all the study abroad expenses from savings and had to take out a loan. Life abroad seemed to cost a lot, and I often got requests for money from my son. But I thought it was pitiful to let him struggle in a foreign country, so I kept sending him money even though it meant accumulating debt. After a year, he successfully completed his study abroad and returned home, although it meant delaying his college graduation by a year. My son came back and immediately started asking for spending money again. Hey, Derek is a college student now. Couldn't he get a part-time job? Huh? You think it's okay for your kid to work and have fun? Unbelievable. I don't mean it like that, but couldn't he try to earn his own spending money? I have my studies. That's a student's job. If I took on a part-time job, I wouldn't be able to properly job hunt. Do you want to ruin your kid's future as a parent? This is why I can't stand people with a low level of education. I'm sorry. My son was the same as ever, but I was relieved to be able to get him through college safely. He got a job at a pretty well-known company, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Once he started working, he finally stopped asking for spending money, which made life much easier. But the debts from his college and study abroad were still there, so I kept working day and night. After 4 years of him working, I was almost done paying off the debt. My son never contributed any money to the house, but I managed. I tried talking to him about contributing a little if he's going to live here, but he said, "You expect your child to give you money? Being a working adult means having social obligations, and it costs money. You, a cleaner, and I, who work at a large company, are not the same." So I never mentioned it again. It's tiring to argue like this every time I say something. Maybe by this time, I was used to living like this, and didn't find working day and night too hard. But unknowingly, maybe my body was screaming for a break. I was probably pretending not to notice. One day, while I was cleaning a certain building, I saw my son coming out of the elevator. I inadvertently called out to him, "Derek." When he saw me, my son made a very annoyed face. "Huh? Who are you?" "Excuse me? I don't know any dirty old woman like you. Don't talk to me so casually, it's annoying." Derek. It was a huge shock to be yelled at by my son like that. My son didn't even look at me properly and quickly left the scene. That night, after finishing my late-night shift and returning home, my son, who should have been sleeping, was up drinking beer in the kitchen. As soon as he saw me, he shouted at me like he had been waiting for me. "Hey, old woman! What are you thinking?" "What are you talking about?" "Why did you call out to me in a place like that? That's a crucial business partner for my company." "Is that so? I've been cleaning that building for a long time. What a coincidence." "Listen. Even if you see me, don't call out to me. It's shameful if people find out my mom is a janitor. Don't embarrass me." "Embarrassing? I've been raising you like this." "What? Do you think you can sell me a favor with that?" "I don't mean it like that." "Anyway, if you see me outside, we're strangers. Don't casually talk to me. It's a shame for me if people know someone like you is my parent." It was quite a shock. I had been working day and night like a workhorse for the sake of my son, never expecting him to say something like this. I had been hoping that one day he would change, but now it felt like that day would never come. As I worked with these thoughts in my mind, I slowly started to feel faint. When I came to, I was lying on a hospital bed. The doctor told me it was due to overworking. "You seem to have accumulated a great deal of fatigue. You've been pushing yourself too hard, haven't you?" "Did I pass out?" "Your colleagues were worried. They said you always work too hard, Mrs. I see." I ended up staying in the hospital for about a month for recovery. Of course, the hospital staff contacted my son, but not once did he visit me during that time. But my colleagues took turns visiting me in the hospital, which was very encouraging. The person who rushed to see me first when he heard I collapsed was Mr. John Harrison. He is a kind person who always praises my work and is considerate of me. He had lost his wife early and raised his daughter as a single father. We had similar circumstances, and we started talking a lot. You've done really well until now. I think it's time for you to take it easy. When Mr. John said that, I couldn't help but shed tears. It felt like all the feelings of being unrecognized and misunderstood that I had been holding inside were melting away. I realized that I had been stuck in the mindset that I have to work hard all this time. A month later, when I was discharged from the hospital, my usual daily life was waiting for me. But I had stopped expecting anything from my son, so I felt a bit lighter. Although I didn't speak to my son much, one day he told me he was getting married. The partner was the daughter of a high-ranking official at a company he was dealing with. That's wonderful. Well, it's natural for a man like me. After all, I graduated from a top university, studied abroad, and am working for a top company. I wanted to say, "Who do you think paid for all that?" But decided not to say anything unnecessary. Saying anything wouldn't change my son. There is nothing to gain from an unproductive argument. But you don't have to come to the wedding. Huh? It would be embarrassing to have a parent like you come. So, I decided to rent a parent. What do you mean by rent a parent? See, it's an era where you can even rent a family. If I can have someone who looks much richer than you attend as my mother, it would make me look good. You're having someone else attend as your mother? That's far better than you coming. So that's what you thought. Of course. You are not suitable for a top-class man like me. Don't come to the wedding as a poor, low-class person who scrapes by. Okay, then I don't care about you anymore. I'm going to move out of this house once I get married, and I'll never come back. I'm cutting ties with you. Okay, if that's what you want, I don't mind. Well, with that settled, I'll finally be free of having to see your poor face ever again. With that, my son announced his plan to move to his new place a week before his wedding and left. I said nothing, merely watched as he walked away. I thought, at last, everything was over. There was still one concern I had, but I didn't share it with my son. Little did I know how it would unfold. On the wedding day, my son called me incessantly, like a madman. Being quite busy, I initially decided not to answer, but his relentless calling left me with no choice. What the hell are you doing? Pick up the phone straight away. Not like you have any serious business anyway. I'm actually quite busy. So, what's up? Isn't today your wedding day? Yeah, that's why I'm calling you. Get over here right now. Huh? What are you talking about? I'm inviting you to my wedding. Be grateful and come now. You don't want to see a poor person like me again, do you? Wouldn't you be embarrassed if I attended? You got a stand-in, didn't you? Quit the chatter and just come. You'll get to see your son in his glory. As I said, I'm busy. I don't have time to attend such a thing. Such a thing? Yes, so, goodbye. As I was about to hang up, my son stopped me in a panic. His voice desperate. You wouldn't happen to know a guy named John, would you? The CEO of the company where my bride's father works. Why so? He approached me, all smiles, saying he owed you a lot. Oh, you mean John Harrison? Yes, him. He's the guest of honor today. He said, I'm overjoyed that my precious employee's daughter is marrying Kathy's son. Oh, I'm quite familiar with John. Really? How do you know the CEO of such a big company? I told you before, didn't I? I work as a cleaner in John's company. That building. John is the CEO of the building where I met my son at work. He's a wonderful boss who cares for each and every one of his employees and is friendly even to us cleaners. We got talking when I once returned something he had left behind at the washstand while I was cleaning the toilet. How come you're friendly with the CEO of a big company while you're just a janitor? We found out that we're both single parents and found a lot in common. And then he asked why you weren't there. He said, you wouldn't neglect to invite your mother, would you? Why not introduce him to the stand-in mom? He knows what you look like, it'll give us away. Oh, really? It's not oh, really. Just get over here now. I told you, I'm not going. Ever since he found out that I raised my son alone, he's been quite caring and a good listener. When my son told me the name of his fiancé's father's company, I was truly surprised. I never dreamed that my son would marry the daughter of an executive working for John's company. I had already told John about this. And also that my son had rejected the idea of me coming to the wedding. John then told me he had a good idea and asked me not to tell my son about our acquaintance until the wedding day. You gotta come or I'll look bad. You're going around telling folks how you struggled to raise me all by yourself. And then everyone's like, you gotta thank your mom or something. And what about you, Derek? Thanking me? Are you nuts? Parents are supposed to raise their kids. Why should I have to be grateful for that? But this is making me look like a chump. It's your job as a parent to fix this. Get over here and brag about how I am such a good son to everyone. Hearing that makes me want to go even less. What? Are you even a parent? What goes around comes around. You're not a child anymore. Take responsibility for yourself. Parents aren't all powerful, and I'm not your parent anymore. With that, I hung up the phone. John was asked to give a speech as the guest of honor at a wedding. Later, he said he gave a great speech with a smile on his face. Someone had recorded the speech, and John showed it to me. Ladies and gentlemen, his mother has tirelessly raised her son, Derek, single-handedly, day and night. She even took out loans to pay for his college and study abroad, while Derek never worked a part-time job and kept demanding money from her. Now a fine working adult, he never contributes a dime at home and keeps spouting nastiness. On this fine day, he even told her not to come to his wedding because she would embarrass him. Let's give a big round of applause for our outstanding groom. There was John, speaking loudly. My son on stage was pale as a ghost. The bride next to him turned beet red and was visibly shaking. She then took a wine bottle and drenched my son's head. You ungrateful wretch! The bride's scream was loud and clear. She held the sides of her dress and stormed out. There was a chorus of boos from the guests, and my son was not only drenched in wine but also a mess with tears and snot all over his face. His white tuxedo was soaked and stained red. Seeing my son like that didn't make me feel anything. It felt like I was watching a farce that had nothing to do with me. Naturally, the wedding was called off. There were many guests from the company and clients invited to the wedding, so the news of what happened at the ceremony spread like wildfire. I heard he began to receive cold stares both inside and outside the office. It seems he eventually quit his job due to the hostile environment, but the details of the wedding went viral on social media, and he couldn't find another because of it. After his bride left, he couldn't afford to pay the rent for their new home, and I heard he was evicted. About a month later, I received a call from a public phone. Mom, where are you right now? Who is this? I don't recall having a son who would call me Mom, not. It's me, Derek. Oh, I do recall knowing someone by that name in the past. What are you talking about? It's my fault. Please help me. I don't have a job. can't pay the wedding expenses. I don't have a place to live. When I came home, you weren't there and someone else was living there. Oh, I moved from the old house. The day of your wedding was moving day, remember? That's why I said I was busy. Where did you move to? There's no need for me to tell you. You're a stranger now. I'm living in a park now. A park? Did you become homeless? Yes. I'm living off picking up cans. You, who look down on janitors, are now picking up cans. That's a pity. Don't you feel sorry for me? Not at all. We're no longer related. Please never contact me again. Goodbye. But I hung up. After that, he never called again. He might not have money to make calls anymore, but it's not my concern. I have no intention of ever seeing or getting involved with him again. Later on, I got remarried to John. His daughter, who had already married and moved out, was very happy about our marriage. From now on, just the two of us are planning to live our second lives happily as a couple. Get out of here, you useless thing. Even as I laid out all the evidence of John's infidelity on the table, his mother Emily just laughed triumphantly. Since I was the one who initiated the divorce, John should technically be the one getting dumped. Yet Emily, far from being apologetic, was rudely trying to kick me out. John, cornered, didn't say a word, his head bowed. I had no expectations left for Emily, who always saw me as an enemy and criticized everything I did, and for John, who not only tolerated but responded to her. I'm moving out today. Emily seemed to hate me, her son's wife, more than she was upset about her son's infidelity. She never tried to reconcile. I went ahead with my moving plans as scheduled, revealing a final secret at the last moment. It was my ultimate revenge against Emily, who mockingly saw me off, and John, who never answered when it mattered. I am Emma. I turned 34 this year. Just a normal housewife who married a sincere man and had an average happy life. We hadn't had kids yet. Children are a gift from heaven. John used to say, so I didn't think much of it. We were a normal couple, but there was one problem that troubled me. It was about Emily. Emily lived close to us. Whenever she showed up around dinner time, I'd be rushed to prepare a meal. Despite eating everything, she constantly complained about the quantity and seasoning of the food. I've come all this way. Don't you have the decency to serve me something nice? I'm sorry. Emily would come unannounced almost daily, and always say things like that. Despite my frustration with her remarks, I tried to avoid causing a scene. Moreover, Emily would often say, "When will you give me a grandchild?" She seemed to blame me. Perhaps because John is a year younger. Even though John and I agreed that children are a gift, Emily wouldn't listen when I explained. Are you just saying that because you're hiding some flaw in yourself? That's too much. No matter what I say, she just keeps nagging me. It's getting nowhere. What used to be a few visits a month became more frequent and longer, becoming nothing but a pain for me. She negates everything I do every day, and I'm just exhausted. Always like this, and it's not good for me or your mother. Please stop her coming over unannounced. What's the big deal? We're family. Emma should rely more on our parents. Rely on them? They do nothing but complain. It just means they have high expectations of you. No matter how much I try to explain to John. They mean well. That's all he says. Even when I express my displeasure about them coming over without notice. But we're family. He never takes my side. Neither my husband nor Emily tries to see things from my perspective. I realize I'm the only one on my side in this house, and I stop relying on John. Then, one day, as I was returning from shopping, heavier bags in hand than usual, my steps were heavy. Thinking about the possibility of Emily's visit, I bought extra groceries, and the thought of preparing dinner was a burden. Without realizing, I sighed. What's with the gloom? Emily? What? Is it inconvenient for you that it's me? I looked up to see Emily, apparently having been waiting in front of the house, glaring at me with her arms crossed. Caught off guard by her even earlier arrival, I involuntarily frowned. She noticed and, narrowing her eyes in displeasure, said, "Do you hate it so much when I come?" "Well, I'm here because my son asked me to. Don't you think it's rude of you to act this way?" "What? What do you mean?" I was shocked by her words. When I asked what she meant, she said, "Emma wants Mom to come over. John told her so." I was speechless with John, who, instead of listening to me, had done the exact opposite. "If you feel that way, you don't have to come over forcibly." Well, what an attitude for me. Acting as if it's harassment when you were the one who wanted it. I couldn't say outright that I hadn't said such a thing, and even if I claimed John was lying, she wouldn't believe me. So, I just stayed silent, saying nothing. Even when John came home for dinner, Emily kept up her constant complaints about me. Can you believe it? I go out of my way to visit, and she sighs at me. Mom, deep down Emma's really happy about it. That can't be true. If that were the case, why would she try to discourage me from coming? Even as Emily relayed John's fabricated story, John seemed unconcerned. Instead, he went along with her, making me out to be the bad fellow. "I'll talk to Emma later." "Mom, just come over whenever you like, as usual." "You're so kind. This wonderful son is wasted on Emma. Showing a little gratitude wouldn't hurt, you know." She looked satisfied as John saw her off with the words she wanted to hear. She said to me, "John is a good person. Be grateful." After the door closed, I glared at John. "What was all that about earlier?" "What do you mean?" "Not I'll talk to her later. I've been saying it for a while now. I'm troubled by Emily's sudden visits." John, feigning ignorance, was met with all the frustration I had been holding back. I couldn't stand him siding with Emily, making me look foolish, not even speaking up for me. "And what's this about me being secretly happy when Emily comes? Who said that? What's the big deal? Mom's visits are helping you out, right?" "Helping me out how? Both of you mocking me while waiting for a meal to be served. What part of that is helpful?" "So you're saying you want Mom to never come again? That's rude. She's coming over thinking of you." The conversation with him, who didn't realize the absurdity of his statements and kept making nonsensical remarks, just ran in circles and got nowhere. Far from it, when confronted with the fact that he lied to Emily about me wanting her to visit, he justifies it as thinking it was for the best. Even though we're speaking English, I feel like nothing is getting through to John, and it's making my head spin. Why would you do something like this? Why would you say that? I became distrustful of John for deliberately making Emily come to our house. Our communication as a couple was non-existent, and I didn't know what to do, unable to trust him. While I was struggling with this alone, I stumbled upon something unbelievable. "I'm going to get a part-time job." "What? Why? If I'm home, I'll have to face Emily all the time. You don't understand, so I have no other choice." John looked unhappy with my decision, but I had no intention of backing down. Since I have no allies in this house, I decided to make sure I'm away as much as possible. As expected, John quickly gave Emily a spare key in preparation for my absences. It seemed John really wanted Emily to keep an eye on me, even persistently asking about my work hours. If I hadn't known, I would have been startled to see Emily waiting at the entrance, timing it to my return. As soon as I opened the door, there was Emily, arms crossed, looking right at me. I realized instantly that John must have informed her and sighed. "Oh." Sighing at the sight of someone, how rude. "You were called here by John, right? Hasn't he returned yet? Didn't you tell him you wanted me to come? What's with that attitude?" "I didn't call for you." If this had been the old me, I would have just swallowed my dissatisfaction. But now that I've realized even John is against me, I've lost all motivation to do so. It was long past the time John should have been home from work, but he still hadn't returned. Even so, Emily seemed displeased with me starting a part-time job. Don't use working as an excuse just because you can't have my grandchild. Please don't assume it's my fault we can't have children. There wasn't anything wrong in the tests. Who knows, maybe the tests just didn't show it. As usual, Emily was saying whatever she wanted in front of me. Even though I started a part-time job and began talking back, which only made Emily angrier, I didn't care what she thought anymore. The part-time job was more than just a way to not be at home. It started when I accidentally saw a woman's name in a notification on John's phone. Seeing that name, I understood everything. John was having Emily monitor me while he went off to cheat. He's probably not coming straight home now, but meeting her instead. I had a reason to be so sure. The name I saw belonged to his ex-girlfriend. I knew it through a mutual friend of ours, and Emily often compared me to her. Emily even bragged. We're still close. So, I clearly remembered her. From this person, there was a message with a heart. Thanks for Sunday. I want to see you again. He received a message with a heart emoji. Despite seeing that, I'm not so oblivious as to not notice anything. From the day I saw that, I decided to take revenge on the two of them. I planned to gather evidence using my own money. I could have used John's money, but I didn't want to rely on anything of his. Then, I found out I was pregnant. Although I hesitated, thinking the child was John's, the child was innocent. Confused, but thinking this way, I told John, and he said something hurtful. A child? Really? Yes, really. I've been to the doctor, there's no mistake. Is it really my child? What do you mean? Incredibly, upon hearing about my pregnancy, he doubted whether he was the father. How could he think I had the time for such things while being watched by Emily every day? Shocked and at a loss for words, John continued. You started a part-time job, right? Maybe you found some guy there. How dare he say that? Just because he's cheating doesn't mean I am too. I wanted to say that but held back and just said, enough. I cut off the conversation and turned my back. I had no more expectations of this man becoming a father. Even Emily, as usual, continued to make me do the housework despite knowing about my pregnancy. Don't even think about relying on John for housework just because you're pregnant. He would do anything even if I asked. While preparing meals, I endured her heartless words. John, seeing his wife like this, said nothing and just watched TV. I had endured it all this time because I was alone, but I couldn't take it anymore. This environment wasn't good for a child. Unable to bear it any longer, I secretly called my parents' house at night. I explained everything and asked for help for the sake of the baby in my belly. My brother Michael offered his support. I'm glad you told me. Thanks for relying on me. Leave the rest to your brother. I had feared they might be angry for not speaking up sooner. But instead of anger, my family offered me words of comfort. I had been so determined to show no weakness to anyone. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. With Michael's help, I prepared for my counterattack. In front of Emily, I demanded a divorce from John. I know you've been cheating all along. I want a divorce. That's troublesome. I won't divorce. What are you saying? Why resist after betraying me? I had thought John would easily agree to a divorce if his infidelity was exposed, but surprisingly, he was reluctant. I wondered if he still had feelings for me, but his words were again unreasonable. Because she can't do housework. His words filled me with anger. At the same time, I felt embarrassed for having even a slight hope. This man, who questioned if the baby was my child, and tried to erase his behavior, couldn't possibly have any affection for me. I was at my limit with his selfishness and Emily's silence in the face of all this. What's that supposed to mean? I'm not a housekeeper. Don't be so presumptuous. Hey, what kind of tone is that to take with John? What is the right way to behave towards a cheater like him? She says anything to me, but never a word to John. In front of her, I scattered the evidence of John's affair all over the table. These were photos taken by a detective I hired with the money I saved from my part-time job. While I was working or being insulted by Emily, John was happily meeting his ex-girlfriend. There were even photos of them coming out of a hotel, irrefutable evidence. Emily was initially silent, but as she came to her senses, she lashed out at me. "It's because you're such a terrible wife that he cheated. I always thought that girl was cuter and better for him than you. So, you're in favor of the divorce then?" Furious at me, Emily was actually justifying John's affair. I quickly pulled out the pre-filled divorce papers. John, despite his complaints, was hurried by me and Emily and seemed to have no choice but to sign. "Are you satisfied now? Get out, you useless thing." "Yes, I'm moving out now. Right this instant." As I sent a message on my phone, the front door opened, and the movers came in cheerfully. Among them was Michael. "Long time no see, John." "What? What's going on?" I knew it would come to this, so I had already asked Michael to help with the move. I had previously explained the situation to Michael, who works in a moving company, and his colleagues, and asked them to pack and move my belongings. As I directed them to my stuff, they efficiently carried out the furniture, leaving John and Emily stunned. I had them move the dresser I bought before marriage and the appliances my parents bought for me without any hesitation. John could only look bewildered as the kitchen became empty. Without saying anything to John, who looked so pitiful, I asked Michael to take the sofa. Even the small sofa Emily used as if it was her own was taken out right in front of her. "Are you taking everything? These were bought with our parents' money for my sister." Michael, towering over her, looked coldly at Emily, who, unable to confront him, glared at me instead. After all the belongings were moved, and as I was about to get into the car, Emily, seemingly regaining her composure, came out to see me off, laughing. "We don't need a wife with no manners like you." "Is that so? Well, I'm done with this mother and son too." Though I retorted with a smile, my anger at John, who wouldn't say anything, and Emily, who comforted him, didn't subside. So, I decided to drop one last bombshell. "Oh, by the way, Emily, do you know why John chose his ex-girlfriend as his affair partner? Obviously, she must be more capable than you. Turns out, she can't have children. That's why she was convenient for him." Meaning, Emily's long-awaited grandchild wouldn't be coming from that relationship. Emily's eyes widened in shock at my words. I couldn't help but laugh at her expression. John, who apparently hadn't expected this to be revealed, looked at me, pale-faced. "How did you know that?" "How? You talked about it with her, didn't you?" "John, what are you thinking?" "It's not like that, Mom. Listen to me." Emily was evidently upset at the prospect of not having a grandchild, and they began to argue. It seemed John hadn't expected Emily to turn against him. Watching them flounder, I smirked. Annoyed things weren't going his way, John glared at me. "Don't trouble her. I'm the one getting divorced. After all the trouble you've caused me? Of course, I'll be claiming alimony in the divorce settlement, so be prepared." "Stop it. She's never worked anything but part-time." "So what? And shouldn't you be worrying about yourself? You'll be paying too." John's defense of his ex-girlfriend wavered as soon as money was mentioned. When I hinted at what was to come, they both started calling me greedy. It was laughable how brazen they were after all they had done. I couldn't stay with such people any longer. As I was about to finally get in the car, Emily shouted, "Then at least give us your child. After you give birth, we'll take it." What kind of logic is that? It's our grandchild. I can't let a wife with such a terrible character raise it. Who knows what kind of adult they'll become? No way. If they're raised in this house, they'll end up like an adult who cheats. I laughed it off, and Emily, unable to retort, fell silent. Feeling refreshed at her reaction, I left my house behind with Michael's help. Later, I heard that the ex-girlfriend told John. I can't pay the divorce settlement. It's impossible. Predictably, she dumped John and disappeared. So, I'm going to change and do better. I want you to come back. I don't understand what you mean by so. Stop saying silly things. It seemed John, disliking the idea of paying both the divorce settlement and child support, thought I would come back and save him the trouble. He was a man of unfathomable thoughts, but probably hadn't thought things through. As I sighed over the phone, Michael, who was listening, couldn't hold back and took the phone from me. I've heard enough. The reason for the divorce is your foolishness. Reflect on it a bit. Realizing Michael's sternness, John, already frightened by the moving incident, quickly hung up. Thanks to Michael pushing for the payment, the divorce settlement was smoothly settled. After the divorce, I'm now taking my time at my parents' house with my newborn baby. By the way, from Emily as well. I want to see my grandchild. You must understand how lonely I feel as a grandmother. Mom received the phone call crying and pleading for help. Mom, being well aware of the situation, said, "After saying you don't need such a wife and kicking her out, how dare you say that?" She yelled over the phone like Michael and hung up. Let us know if you need anything. Families are there to help each other. Yes, thank you. I need to be strong too. When I was in that house, I felt alone and burdened. But now, I have a supportive family. Determined to be strong for my child, I'm working hard and moving forward.